nation drowning in blessings Allah had poured over them. Fertile land stretching as far as the eye could see, warehouses overflowing with grain, stacked higher than any man could reach, palaces gleaming under the sun, their walls catching the light like polished gold. Markets where wealth changed hands like water, where merchants shouted prices from dawn till dusk, where silk and spice and silver moved through crowded streets in an endless river of commerce. And yet, beneath all of it, their hearts stayed empty. They believed that if Allah were truly angry with them, He would never have given them this much wealth. Prosperity to them was proof of divine approval. They mistook the gift for a guarantee, the blessing for a bribe that bought them permanent safety. So Allah sent a prophet among them. No crown, no army, no wealth of his own to rival theirs. Just words of truth, carried on a humble tongue, spoken without fear even to men who held the power of life and death in that city.
These idols cannot benefit you. They cannot harm you either.
But when this nation crossed every limit of denial, when arrogance hardened into open defiance, and the prophet's patience finally ran dry after years of rejection, the sky delivered its verdict. The sea began to speak in a place where neither life nor safety could be trusted anymore. And that is where the strangest, most hopeful story in the entire Quran begins. Nineveh, in what is now Iraq, along the banks of the Tigris River, stood one of the oldest and richest cities in the ancient world. A city where the very ground seemed to birth gold. Trade flowed endlessly through the river's veins, boats arriving daily loaded with goods from distant lands. And its people, drunk on comfort and generations of unbroken prosperity, had convinced themselves they were untouchable, safe from Allah's punishment, simply because they had never once witnessed it with their own eyes. You should have seen their arrogance up close. They believed the blessings they'd been given, blessings so rare that few nations in history ever received anything close to this abundance, were the reward of their own greatness, their own cleverness, their own tireless work. They took the gift and buried the giver beneath layers of pride so thick that no warning could pierce through. This was the same nation that rose after the people of Prophet Lut, alayhi salam, had already been destroyed for their own transgressions generations earlier. You would think a nation living in the shadow of that history, a nation that had surely heard the stories passed down from their elders, would tread carefully, would learn from the ashes of those who came before. But time has a strange way of erasing memory. Comfort makes people forgetful, and in time they too sank back into pride, into desire, into a worldly obsession that swallowed their souls whole, one generation at a time. According to the Quran, they had fallen deep into shirk and misguidance, worshipping stone instead of the one who shaped it, bowing before carved images instead of the Creator who gave them the very hands that carved them, calling on creation instead of Allah, believing idols carved by their own hands were sources of power greater than themselves, greater even than the Lord who made the heavens and the earth, telling one another, generation after generation.
These elders bring us closer to Allah. We ask them to carry our prayers to Him, because we are too small, too sinful, too unworthy to reach Him ourselves.
It was a lie passed down so many times that it had come to feel like truth. Allah addressed this directly and with devastating clarity in Surah Yunus, that they worship besides Allah things that can neither harm nor benefit them, calling these lifeless idols their intercessors, their bridge to the divine. And in Surah Al-Ahqaf, the question is asked with piercing force, who is more astray than one who calls upon, besides Allah, those who cannot answer Him until the day of judgment, and who are completely unaware that He is even praying to them? Stone does not hear, stone does not answer. And when mankind is gathered on that final day, these very idols, the ones they bowed before for generations, the ones they built entire businesses and bloodlines around, will become their enemies and will deny ever being worshipped at all, leaving their worshippers utterly alone before their Lord. Into this city of gold and denial, Allah sent His prophet, Yunus, alayhi salam. Pain lived in his eyes, the pain of watching a people destroy themselves slowly. But certainty lived in his voice, the kind of certainty that only comes from knowing you carry the truth, even when no one around you wants to hear it, even when every door is shut in your face.
Worship none but Allah. Fear only Him. Hope only in Him. Everything else you bow to is powerless dust that cannot save you on the day you need saving most.
The people laughed in his face. Why should they fear? They said they were wealthy, powerful, untouchable. If Allah were displeased with them, surely they wouldn't be standing here surrounded by all this abundance, generation after generation.
The idols you insult, the idols you say cannot help or harm, they belong to our fathers.
And their fathers before them, stretching back further than anyone alive can remember.
Who are you to challenge generations of tradition with your lone voice?
Yunus, you insult our gods with every word you speak. Leave this place before your tongue costs you your life.
According to Ibn Kathir's tafsir, the city's ruling elite did not merely worship these idols out of blind tradition passed down without thought. They ran an entire economy around them. Pilgrims came from surrounding lands to offer sacrifices at their shrines. Craftsmen carved new idols for sale in busy workshops. Gold coins flowed in every single month from this trade in false gods, enriching the very men who stood as the loudest voices against Yunus. How could these leaders possibly explain to their people that if everyone turned to Allah alone, abandoning the idols overnight, their entire economy, their profits, their power, their carefully built status, would collapse in an instant, leaving them as poor and powerless as anyone else? This makes one thing devastatingly clear. Their shirk was never only a matter of belief or honest misunderstanding. It was a business interest, dressed up in the robes of faith, fiercely protected by those who profited most from the people's ignorance. Yunus alayhi salam did not give up, even as the years wore on and his message met the same wall again and again. He kept returning to them day after day, year after year, inviting them gently at first, then firmly, then with increasing urgency as he watched the punishment draw closer with every refusal. And every single time, without fail, they refused.
If you're truthful, bring the punishment you keep threatening us with. Show us with our own eyes. Words mean nothing to us.
This continued for years, a slow, grinding cycle of invitation and rejection that would test the patience of any man, let alone break the spirit of one who had given his entire life to a message no one wanted to hear. And then, one day, the prophet's heart could bear no more. Something inside him, exhaustion built up over years, grief at watching his people march willingly toward their own destruction, a longing to be free of this endless wall of denial, pushed him to leave the city without waiting any longer. But this was the mistake, not a major sin, not a betrayal of his mission, but the kind of haste that can happen even to a prophet of Allah when the weight of constant rejection grows too heavy for any human heart to carry alone, leaving without waiting for Allah's permission to depart. And here, right here, begins the most terrifying turn in the entire story, a turn that would test Yunus alayhi salam in ways no ordinary trial ever could. Yunus boarded a ship, seeking passage away from the city that had rejected him one final, exhausting time. The sea at first was calm as glass, stretching out flat and undisturbed beneath a darkening sky. The wind was gentle, almost soothing, brushing against the sail like a whisper meant to comfort him. The sky sat at perfect peace, painted in soft evening colors that seemed to promise rest after years of struggle. It felt for a moment like everything had finally settled, like the storm inside his own chest had quieted along with the sea. But then the sky changed color without warning, darkening from the edges inward like ink spreading through water. The wind began to scream, tearing at the sails with sudden violent force. Waves rose higher than the ship itself, crashing down like mountains collapsing into the churning sea below. The sailors panicked, scrambling across the deck as water crashed over the sides. The captain shouted over the deafening roar of the storm,
Lighten the load! Throw the cargo overboard, or the ship will sink and take every soul on board down with it into the deep!
But even after they had thrown everything they could possibly spare into the raging water, the ship still groaned and shuddered under the relentless weight of the storm, refusing to be calmed. It was as if the sea itself, alive and furious, was demanding one particular soul be surrendered before it would still its waves. Desperate and running out of every other option, the sailors decided to cast lots. An old maritime practice used to determine who among them would be thrown into the sea to lighten the ship and calm the furious waters. The name that came out was Yunus. The sailors hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances across the storm-lashed deck.
But he is a righteous man. Surely this cannot be right. Cast again.
Agreed.
Astonished and deeply uncomfortable, they cast the lots a second time. Yunus again. A murmur of fear spread through the frightened crew. They cast a third time, refusing to believe what the lots kept telling them. Yunus once more. Now there was no doubt left among them. No room for denial or delay. Yunus, alayhi salam, himself broke the heavy silence and said,
This is Allah's decree, and I will not resist what my Lord has written.
No screaming, no running, no complaint escaped his lips, not even a whisper of protest. And with quiet, complete acceptance, he lowered himself into the raging, churning sea. In that instant, the churning water closed around him like a door sealing shut behind him forever. And a creature of the deep, one whose size and nature no man on that ship could have ever imagined in his darkest dreams, rose silently from below and swallowed him whole in a single motion. His entire body vanished into a darkness thicker and more total than any night he had ever known on land. This was the belly of the fish. And here begins the deepest darkness described anywhere in the Quran, and paradoxically, its greatest and most tender mercy. Darkness pressed in on every side, total and suffocating. Loneliness pressed in on every side, heavier than the water above him. No light reached him here, no sound but the slow, steady rhythm of a living creature's insides moving around him in the black. Here, in that crushing solitude, stripped of everything, his city, his ship, his freedom, even the sky above him, Yunus, alayhi salam, came face to face with the raw truth of his own haste. I was too quick to leave. I did not wait for my Lord's permission. I let my exhaustion, my grief, my human limits decide for me, instead of trusting the one who sent me. And in this deep, crushing darkness, where any ordinary man would have broken entirely, a voice rose, quiet at first, then filled with total, unshaken surrender.
La ilaha illa anta subhanaka. Inni kuntu min al-dha'alimin.
There is no God but you. Glory be to you, indeed I have been among the wrongdoers. No excuse offered in his own defense. No argument raised to soften what he had done. Only complete, humble surrender to the one who could see him even in the belly of a fish, at the bottom of a raging sea, in the deepest hour of the night, farther from any human eye than any man before him had ever been. According to the tafsir, Yunus alayhi salam remained inside the fish for 3 full days and 3 full nights, calling upon Allah in that darkness without ceasing, without giving up hope even for a moment despite having every reason to. And then Allah commanded the fish itself, Do not harm my servant, carry him gently and place him upon the shore, unharmed and whole. In one single moment, a place of total crushing hopelessness turned back into life. And the fish, obedient to the command of its creator, released Yunus, alayhi salam, gently upon the wet sand of an empty shore. His body was weak, drained of all strength after days without food, without light, without a single breath of fresh air. His skin was frail, stretched thin and pale from the ordeal he had just survived. But he was breathing, he was alive, he was, against every possible expectation, safe. Allah caused a tree to grow over him in that open, barren field, its broad leaves unfolding to give him shade from the punishing sun. Allah gave him food when his body needed nourishment most desperately. Allah gave him healing when every part of him ached from head to foot. The very Lord whose command had been left unfulfilled in a single moment of haste was the very first, without hesitation, to rush to his servant's aid the instant he returned to him in humility and surrender. Meanwhile, back in Nineveh, life had continued exactly as it always had, untouched by what their prophet had just endured on their behalf. The people remained selfish, arrogant, and disobedient, utterly unaware that Yunus had been thrown into the sea, unaware of the darkness he had suffered while they went about their trade and their idol worship as if nothing had changed. Allah's decree, delayed but never forgotten, never withdrawn, finally came upon them without warning. The sky darkened suddenly, clouds thickening into a suffocating blanket overhead that blotted out the sun entirely. Wind roared through the streets, tearing awnings from shop fronts and scattering market stalls like leaves. Lightning split the darkness in jagged white streaks that lit up terrified faces for half a second at a time. And then, seawater surged from the river, flooding straight into the heart of the city, swallowing streets that had once echoed only with the sound of trade and laughter and idle mockery. What had once been nothing more than an empty threat to them, a joke they had mocked for years without consequence, was now becoming a storm of undeniable, overwhelming reality, crashing through their doors and into the very homes they had built their false sense of safety upon. Every man rushed into the flooding streets in panic. Every woman clutched her children tighter than she ever had before. Every child cried out in confusion and raw terror, not understanding what was happening to the only world they had ever known. And soon the entire city gathered together in the open, weeping, begging Allah for forgiveness in a single overwhelming wave of desperation that swept through every household at once.
Ask Allah for forgiveness. Ask now immediately, before it's too late for all of us.
Voices screamed over the howling wind.
Oh Allah, we are weak. We sinned against you for generations.
Our misguidance, our cruelty, our arrogance, every bit of it was our own doing, and no one else's fault but ours. One single cry rose above the chaos and echoed through every flooded street, carried by the wind itself.
O Allah, forgive us. We are your servants, and we fell asleep in heedlessness for far, far too long.
According to the tafsir, the people wept without stopping, hour after hour, refusing to give up hope even as the storm raged violently around them and the water crept higher against their doors. Mothers, in their desperation, even made their own children cry harder, believing with everything they had left that the raw sincerity of a child's tears might move Allah's mercy to descend and the punishment to be lifted before it consumed everything they had ever known. And then, in His infinite mercy, a mercy far greater than their sins deserved, Allah looked upon the repentance and the broken hearts of His servants and withdrew the punishment that had already begun to swallow their city whole. The sea pulled back, retreating from the streets as suddenly and completely as it had arrived. The city, against all odds, against everything they deserved, was saved. Homes remained standing, fields remained intact. Markets, though shaken to their core, still stood in their place, waiting to be reopened. And upon those who had wept and prayed with shattered, humbled hearts, Allah's mercy descended like the first rain after a long, punishing drought. That nation, humbled beyond recognition, stripped of every ounce of the arrogance they once wore so proudly, now understood only the fear and honor of Allah, a lesson that all their wealth, all their power, all their generations of prosperity could never have taught them on their own. Sometime later, once Yunus, alayhi salam, had recovered his strength on that distant shore beneath the shade of the tree Allah had grown for him, he made his way back to his people, unsure of what he would find waiting for him after everything that had happened. And what he found was almost unrecognizable from the city he had left behind. The same nation that had once laughed in his face, that had mocked his warnings for years, and dismissed his every word as the ramblings of a madman, was now standing before him in tears, broken and humbled in a way he had never witnessed in all his years among them. They had repented with everything they had left to give. The punishment that once loomed so close over their heads had been lifted entirely by the mercy of the very Lord they had once ignored and mocked without shame. This is the nation Allah chose to save, not because of their wealth, not because of their strength, not because of anything they had built with their own hands, but because of their faith when it finally, desperately arrived. However late it came, however close they had come to losing everything first. Today, this story leaves us with a lesson that echoes far beyond the shores of ancient Nineveh, far beyond the belly of that fish, reaching into every dark moment any of us will ever face. However stormy the sea of your own life may be right now, Whether you've lost your job and don't know how you'll recover, whether a relationship is broken beyond what feels like repair, whether your faith feels weak and distant no matter how hard you try to hold on to it, whether you feel swallowed whole by your own personal darkness with no light in sight. Remember this: if we too cry out in that darkness and say with full, humble sincerity,
لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين.
then remember, the Lord who kept his prophet alive in the belly of a fish at the bottom of a raging sea, in complete and total darkness, and who then pulled him out safely onto dry land, healed and whole, pulling you out of your own hardship, whatever shape it takes, is nothing difficult for him at all. The real issue was never the darkness itself, no matter how deep or how total it feels. The real question, the one that decides everything, the one that decided everything for an entire nation and for a prophet in the belly of a fish, is simply this: in that darkness, who do we call upon? Right.
لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين.
In the comments right now. If this story moved you, like the video and subscribe for more.